Thank you all for joining us today for the Law School Personal Statement Workshop. My name is Marcy Morrison, and I am a pre-grad pre-law advisor in the main UC San Diego Career Center. And I want to say a special thanks to all of the alumni that are here today to share about their experience applying to law school, especially about the personal statement process. And I also want to give a shout out to Madigan Turnquist that's here with us today. She's one of my Career Center colleagues, and she's going to be helping us behind the scenes in the chat and the helping with breakout rooms. And so if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask her. Madigan, did you want to say a quick hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like Marcy said, my name is Madigan. I also work in the main campus Career Center. I work with students in the social sciences. I was doing admin support today. So in terms of questions for the panelists, I think we're going to have those at the end. But if you have any logistical questions, feel free to just direct message me.
Thanks so much, Madigan. I really appreciate it. And just to give you all a little bit of an overview of what we'll be doing today is first I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and then they're going to be sharing a little bit more about their application journey with a focus on the personal statement. And then I'm going to give you all an opportunity to jot down some ideas that might have come from this and that you can take with you to the breakout room. And yeah, so personal statements are a really hot topic. So I've really wanted to create this event because I know it can be pretty overwhelming, and it's helpful to hear from people that have already gone through this process. So I wanted to first start by having the panelists introduce themselves. I'll call you out. So Alexa, could you please share when you graduated, what you studied, where you are at law school? And I know you're doing an internship as well, so maybe you want to share that too.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name's Alexa. I'm a incoming 2L student at California Western School of Law. I graduated from UCSD in 2023 with a major in political science, public law, and a minor in public service. And I am currently interning at an immigration firm here in San Diego.
Calvin.
Hey everyone, my name is Calvin. I graduated from UCSD in 2023, sixth college, majored in political science. And right now I'm just currently waiting for classes to start again. But this past summer, I was at Sidley Austin in San Francisco.
And did you want to share that you're going to be doing an exchange?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I go to Harvard, but I am finishing my last year at Berkeley, which is because they have like an exchange program that they historically have had. So I'm very excited to be back in California.
Thanks so much, Calvin. Mia.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia. I graduated from UC San Diego in 2024 in the spring, ERC, and I majored in international studies with a concentration in philosophy. And right now I'm at USC in Los Angeles, and I went straight through. I'm a rising 2L, and this summer I was at a big law firm's Tokyo office as like a summer associate. So that was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to sharing um, some, hopefully helpful information about the personal statement.
Thanks, Mia. All right, Alessia.
Hi everyone, my name's Alessia. I graduated in 2024 with a degree in computer science, so I'm a little bit different from everyone else with a STEM background, but that's okay. And I'm an incoming law student, so I don't have much advice on actual law school itself, but the application process, hopefully I can help you guys with.
Thanks, Alessia. And Alessia, do you want to share what you did after graduation?
Yeah, so last year I did my master's in computer science at Oxford, so it was a one-year program, so excited to almost be done with it. I'm technically not done yet, so after this I'll have to finish writing, but
Thanks, Alessia. Tommy.
Hey folks, my name's Tommy. Also a diehard Sixer, Six College rules. I graduated in fall of 2021 with a degree in political science data analytics, which is technically considered a Bachelor of Science degree, although I have some thoughts about that. I'm currently a Berkeley law student, a rising 3L. Classes start next week, so I'm technically still a graduated 2L, or just ended 2L. And I'm currently at the city attorney's office in San Francisco for the code enforcement department.
Thanks so much, Tommy. I appreciate it. All right. So, in terms of the personal statement, I think that honestly, this is a question. I mean, I should probably do some analytics to feel like how many appointments are around personal statement. I feel that it's something that can really freeze people sometimes because they're like, what do I share? How much do I share? Like, what do they really want? And, and I know you all know this, but it's hearing from admissions, right? It's really an opportunity to get to know who you are. And they always talk about like wanting to really get a feel for who you are. And then, talking about defining a defining moment that really really shaped you to wanting to go to law school, or perhaps it was like a series of defining moments. I've found so many different variations of it, but the number one theme that I see is that it's truly unique to each person. Nobody else could write your personal statement. Calvin, I don't think I saw yours, but I saw everybody else's here, and none of yours repeated anything in other people's personal statements. So, and I know you all hear this a lot from admissions too, that they want you to show them, not tell them. And so that is kind of an art. And sometimes it takes like multiple rounds. Like you think it would be easy, right, to tell your story, but it's like how to tell your story for a law school application can take some time to finesse. So I'd love for the panelists to talk about how they chose what they wrote about, and maybe talk a little bit about the challenges that you did have with the process and how you overcame that and got through to the other side. Because I don't think it's definitely not an easy process, but it'd probably be helpful to hear your guys' tips of how you got to that final step. So I'm going to start with you, Tommy, and we'll take about 5 minutes each. And if there's anything that you want to tie in there that's related maybe to some highlights of the application process in general, that's great. Or you can just focus on the personal statement. So Tommy, we're going to go around the other way now.
Yeah, great. I think probably a good place to start is I was never a person who thought that I would apply for law school. I was very much on the fence. I was wishy-washy for probably a good 2 to 3 years, after graduation, during graduation. And partially that was because, not to get too sidetracked, but I originally was in the humanities. I was particularly focusing on pursuing a career in playwriting, actually, completely unrelated from law, which got derailed during the COVID pandemic. I think the 2 to 3 years that I kind of took to get to law school was very valuable to me because I understand that there's a lot of people who are going to be applying this cycle and applications are going to be due very soon. But I must have worked on probably about 12 different drafts of my personal statement. And Marcy can vouch for this. She's worked with me throughout this process. I'm not expecting everyone here to write 12 drafts. I would actually encourage you not to do that. But the reason I bring that up is because it took me some time to realize what role a personal statement really plays as part of my application packet. I think that's kind of a good place to start. What really helped me figure out what my personal statement could highlight was figuring out that the other parts of my application package includes letters of recommendation, resume, LSAT score, and GPA. Now, resume is just a list of things that I've done professionally, and I feel like a lot of the experiences that I had done kind of spoke for themselves in terms of why I wanted to go to law school. The personal statement really was an opportunity to highlight some personal experiences that I had that wasn't going to be shown by a letter recommendation that my professors wrote about me in the classroom, or my resume, which was just a rote list of all the different things I did professionally. I think a really great place to start with your personal statement, where I started, was realizing that it doesn't need to be your entire life story. Right? And most law schools are going to have you submit a 2-page double-spaced 12-point font Times New Roman essay, which is not going to be enough for you to be able to tell your story from beginning to end. But rather, I think focusing on what Marcy said, a key moment that I think really galvanized me and my interest in the law was what really helped me write a successful personal statement. For me, that was a particular series of activism that I did. So when I was at UC San Diego and right after I graduated, I did a lot of work with redistricting in the city of San Diego's 2021 redistricting process. And my experiences there, I think, really highlighted about what limitations activism can have as a force for change, primarily because we were part of a broad coalition of different community groups. And ultimately, we ended up being stonewalled by a majority of 5 out of 9 board of redistricting commissioners who unfortunately were not willing to listen to, I feel like, a lot of the demands that the community and particularly underrepresented communities were bringing to the table. So my personal statement, I think, really highlights around that experience and also highlights, I think, the agency that I tried to that I essentially exhibited after that event happened. It's one thing to lay out a series of events that happened chronologically, but it's another to show kind of a cause and effect, a past and future of I would say, the character development that I think really adds a lot of flavor to my personal statement. So for me, to kind of go through what my personal statement looked like, I started with a very brief anecdote of what it was actually like to be in that room listening to a group of commissioners, when you're with really diverse community members demanding better representation, and for us to be stonewalled again and again and again, and there being no recourse that we could essentially have because there was no appeal process, and the redistricting commissioners we felt like weren't representative of San Diego's changing population. Then I kind of jumped back a little bit to the past for a paragraph or so, talked a little bit about my past interest in activism, talking a little bit about how in high school, I think the Parkland shooting happened and gun violence activism is where I really got my feet. Then I kind of evolved into more San Diego scale things. And I moved on to the present where I kind of hit this wall where I saw there needed to be somebody who was kind of inside or who was willing to open the door to kind of elevate, I feel like, a lot of the voices that weren't being heard by people in power. And my personal statement doesn't end there. It talks about how that moment made me seek out other resources. So I started, looking for opportunities where I can talk with lawyers. I started looking into, constitutional law. I started looking into city ordinances and how through that experience, through my agency, after what had happened to us, I was able to figure out that the law is one way that we can really use. It really is a tool for change that can be difficult to achieve through other means. And then my last paragraph kind of talks about how all these things in the past that I've experienced has kind of encouraged me to be a lawyer in the government space and the public interest space. And it ends with how I wanted to particularly pursue a career in electoral politics or civil rights. So that's kind of a general overview of my personal statement and how I got there. But again, I really want to highlight again that first, your personal statement doesn't need to be your entire life story. And second, I think it's really a easy way to write an engaging statement when you show movement throughout your essay. So I'll leave it at there and I'll pass the torch on.
Thank you so much, Tommy. And yeah, one thing that I saw with all of yours that I did review is that one of the arts is actually allowing the reader to feel like they're actually on your journey with you. And Tommy, I remember I didn't know much about the issue that you were addressing, but I remember after reading it that I was almost as fired up as you were to go make a difference, right? So that's kind of the feeling leaving the admissions committee, just as passionate and as excited as you are about this change that you want to make through going to law school. So thanks, Tommy. All right, Alessia, you're next.
Okay, perfect. I guess I came from a little bit of an untraditional background compared to maybe everyone else who probably had a more concrete idea that they wanted to go to law school. So I wasn't really sure that I wanted to go to law school. So when I was writing my personal statement, I had to do also a lot of reflection. One thing that really helped me was listening to this podcast. I think I shared it with Marcy, but it's from the Yale and Harvard admissions dean. I can send the link in the chat after I finish, but they basically have 4 episodes about personal statements. And what I think is really helpful is they have 4 personal statement examples that they read through, and then they highlight what specifically about that personal statement they like and what they don't like. So I kind of got a better sense of what they mean when they say show, don't tell. So I think if you're planning on doing the application process, I think that podcast is really helpful to listen to. So for my personal statement in specific, since I'm a computer science background, I wanted to convey that I am ready for law school. I understand what that means. It's not, and how that ties into my journey. And it wasn't a complete 360. And then the other part that I'm trying to answer is why now? So I think, especially if you are planning to go straight from undergrad straight to law school, you need to have a reason why you're doing that step. Because I think a lot of law schools actually prefer when you have some work experience. So in my case, I didn't have any work experience full time, and I was going to Oxford. So I needed to kind of explain why that was my path and why going to law school right after this all makes sense. So I started like I guess like I can kind of walk through like my application as a whole in the personal statement, but my first paragraph was kind of about the first moment that I saw injustice with technology. So the reason I want to go to law school is to do tech regulation stuff. And so I talked about the first time I discovered that. And then I talked about how at UCSD I got involved in things that were broader than just computer science. For example, I was on the moot court team, and my first year there was a case about technology being military grade and whether it's how that goes against privacy. So I talked about that. And then I talked about how I was a mentor for younger computer science students, and I had the opportunity to teach about ethics and AI. And then I talked about how when I went go to Oxford, my goal was to get like a global perspective on these issues and to take a class about law and computer science. And then I tied in my internship and how I was able to communicate with like technical people. So I guess like my end goal with this like essay was to show them that I'm a person that can bridge technology people as well as lawyers. And so that was kind of like my journey and my story. It did take a long time to write because one, I struggle to write, which I think I'm going to struggle with in law school as well. But also, it's really personal to you, and stories that may make sense to you may not make sense to other people. So, my biggest advice is to have someone that isn't your family, isn't your mom, dad, friend, read it. So, like, Marcy's a great resource to just like go through and read your essay and just make sure it makes like sense. Because a lot of things to you that may be self-explanatory, like moot court or something, you don't know what level of detail you need to explain it to a stranger. Because the admissions officers, while they're familiar with these things, it may need some more detail or less detail than you're providing. And then I also had a friend from high school that read mine, and she helped me reorganize it in a way that made it flow a lot better. So I'm like really grateful for her. I sent her a box of cookies for her help. But yeah, if you have someone that can read through it, I think that's really helpful. And if any of you guys later have questions about like coming from a different background and how to navigate that, like I'm happy to answer those too.
Thank you so much, Alessia. All right, who's next? Mia.
It's kind of hard to follow up after Tommy and Alessia, but echoing everything they said and all their excellent advice, um, I feel like the best advice I can give about the personal statement is similar to Tommy's, and it's just be prepared to write like as many drafts as it's gonna take. And for me, that was probably close to like 12, as Tommy said, and Marcy can attest to this. Also, I think like being flexible with the kind of topics that you choose to write about is important. I initially started writing my personal statement, and I don't know if they still ask for like supplemental statements, but when I was applying, like diversity statements were like I think required for some schools and optionals for others. And I think what I wanted to use for my personal statement, I ended up using that for my diversity statement. And so just being flexible with moving things around and also just not losing sight of what the personal statement is for. And a really great way for me to put that together was um, like it's there to fill the gaps that your resume and your transcript can't fill. And for me, that was, why law school, and I think for a lot of people, it's why law school as well, because even if, you come from like a more traditional, I guess, like pre-law background, like poli sci, philosophy or whatever, you have to answer why law school. There's plenty of people who go and pursue political science degrees, and law school isn't the right choice for them for whatever reason. And so I guess really um, doing some reflection and thinking about why that was the right path for me, especially at the timing that I went, which was straight through. And I think now I think there's more of a preference for applicants who work in between um, university and law school. In terms of what I ended up writing my personal statement about, um, my I come from a little bit of an international background. I grew up sort of back and forth between Southern California and Japan. And so it was about my kind of understanding of um, like how my understanding of World War II evolved over time and like growing up and learning about it in both Japanese school, like Japanese local public schools and also like American public schools in which like we really didn't learn too much about World War II, at least in my public high school in Los Angeles. And so, kind of untangling how my understanding of the war and its effect on, countries in Asia and also the US developed, I kind of shared that I have an international perspective, and with my JD, I hope to kind of bridge those like cultural gaps, in whatever, field of law I ended up going into. And so, but it took a lot of time to tease that out, is what I'm saying. And so it took a lot of drafts and a lot of reflection. And I think like a piece of advice I think I got from Marcy through this process was, even if you're someone like myself who like I always envisioned myself going to law school, um, you're gonna have to be able to pinpoint those reasons, and those reasons kind of come to you through, experiences you have in like class or daily life, or talking with friends or with mentors. And so when you have those kind of moments of like, yeah, oh, this is a reason why I want to go to law school, or like, if I went to law school, like I would be able to do XYZ in this kind of situation, I would suggest like writing those down and like just having like a bank of ideas you can refer to when you're like, feeling stuck, and just try writing out all of them. That's what I ended up doing. And some were not good and some were, there was something there, some potential there, so it just ended up teasing more of those out. And so just, being prepared to write many drafts is, I think, the best way to do it, because I think it's kind of inevitable that you're gonna have to write many drafts. So
Thank you so much, Mia. And one thing I wanted to say that I admired in your process too was the fact that you had a team of other students that were applying to law school, and you guys supported each other too with the application process. So really developing a team of like peers as well and reaching out to alumni as well. So thank you so much, Mia. Okay, Calvin, you're up.
Okay, so I think I represent the very stereotypical law school applicant. I came into college literally knowing that I wanted to go to law school. I majored in political science because I knew that it was something that like I could excel at, so I could get a good GPA in. So my personal statement, if you could say that there's like a cookie cutter personal statement, it would probably be mine in terms of the formats. I would describe it as basically a series of anecdotes, which were all like Marcy said, defining moments that really cemented for me that I wanted to go to law school. So I started my application or started my personal statement with a story from my childhood of like what that initially spurred me to want to pursue a legal career. And then, like I said, I was very stereotypical. I in college, I knew I wanted to go to law school, so I did internships in law, and more specifically in the field of law that like I knew I wanted to eventually work in. And so my personal statement from my childhood then goes on in a series of anecdotes of the different experiences that I had in law school or in undergrad at all my internships. It- but a series of anecdotes that cemented for me that I really want to go to law school. And it wasn't just that they were showing my interest, it was also showing like my professional, academic, intellectual growth. Um, I think Tommy brought up a really good point earlier that like your personal statement is just one component of your application. Your resume is also on there. So please avoid the pitfall of just turning your personal statement into a cover letter. Now, I say that in mine, I still kind of talked about my like professional growth. I still talked about like my skills growth. So there were aspects of it that might sound like a cover letter, but the reason for that is because I applied straight through, right? So I applied in my senior year. And Alessia also brought up a great point that law schools really like seeing work experience. And the reason for that is because they want to know that you're sure about this, that you have done your like due diligence, that you um like you're not just a political science major who doesn't really know what else to do and decided to apply to law school. Like they want to know that you're really sure about this. So for me, I knew that there would be that kind of like mental hurdle I had to get over as a straight through applicant. And so that's why for my personal statement, I erred a bit more on the side of trying to like um talk up like my professional development as well. But again, uh I really want to emphasize that still you don't want it to be all like that. You want to show personal connection to why you're pursuing a legal career, because you want it to be a sort of compelling narrative so that you this is showing that this is what I want to do and look at all these things that I've done to prove that I know that this is what I want to do. And like I said in the very beginning, this is just like one example. Like Marcy said, like no person's personal statement is going to be all the same. I think I only say that mine is like probably the most kind of cookie cutter is because it's probably kind of the most like generic format. And so I present that as like one perspective, compared to everyone else's perspective here. But other than that, my last thing or last sort of like piece of advice I would say about writing your personal statement is if you do decide to talk about like a specific field of law that like you want to go into, do not feel absolutely married to that. Don't like be scared that you're signing like a blood commitment that like in your personal statement, this is exactly what you're going to do after law school. Like it does not have to be that way. You just have to show that you have at least put in like a significant amount of thought into this. And I will wrap up there.
Thank you so much, Calvin. That was super helpful. Alexa.
Yeah, so in terms of my personal statements, I also always knew that I wanted to do law school, so it's why like I got into UCSD with the same major that I graduated with, so I never changed majors or anything. But I focus on my journey being a first generation student who I did school in Mexico and then I switched education systems here in the US. So I kind of went over how I struggle with the language barrier and being away from family and that support that I was used to. And then I kind of started going into how I started seeing how me being bilingual and from the background that I came was more of a gift that I was able to use in being involved in internships at UCSD. So similar to Calvin, since I knew I wanted to do law school, I started doing internships in law in UCSD. So I used me being bilingual. I explained how I started doing pro bono clinics, being an interpreter, and how that kind of reinforced what kind of law I wanted to do. But again, I didn't go so much in depth into what I was doing in those internships, but more focusing on how those were defining who I was, if that makes sense. Because again, they can see what I was doing in my resume in those internships. Um, and I also shared like an anecdote of one of the stories that I heard at my internship and related that to how I could relate to that story with that client. And I kind of closed my personal statement with kind of my journey being like a turning point from being someone that didn't know English at all, and then now applying law school and using that gift that I was seeing being bilingual to be able to help people who don't have access to legal resources because of that language barrier or income status. Um, and me personally, I think one piece of advice that I have is kind of to what Mia shared, like be ready to have multiple edits and hear a lot of like constructive like criticism and be opening to what other people are saying about your personal statement. Marcy really helped me cut down my personal statement because I wrote like my first draft was really long. So definitely be open to that feedback that you get. I had multiple people read my personal statement, like mentors and Marcy and like a close friend. Because I feel like it is easy to want to overshare and tell your entire story. But at the end of the day, I think you really have to focus on like what you want admissions to know and show who you really are and why you want to go to law school. And definitely at the end, like just give yourself grace and time because the application process it is very overwhelming. But I feel like at the end of the day, giving yourself some grace and that you'll get there eventually.
Thank you so much, Alexa. And thanks so much to all of you. Like it's, even though I've been on the journey with most of you, it's like really cool to hear like the reflection back, right? And I know that everything you shared here today is definitely so helpful for everybody listening. And I know they're excited to meet with you in the breakout rooms. And before we do that, I am going to stop recording, but I would like for you all just to take a couple of minutes to jot down some thoughts and ideas. Maybe you already have, but maybe something that sparked for you, like a defining moment or like these anecdotes that they mentioned, to jot those down. And in about like just another minute or two, we'll move over to breakout rooms. You can select your own room. And if you want to stop in and visit with multiple panelists, that is okay too. But take a minute because that was a lot. Like it's a lot of great nuggets that were shared. So I'll give you guys like 2 minutes to write down some ideas and I'll stop recording.